Hi, I'm Phil Bainbridge, and in this video, we're going to look at our ongoing live coding project 2. So I've already got project 1. We don't want to interfere with any of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click and make a copy so we can build on what we have, but you can always refer back to it. So if we're going to also right click and rename this, and we'll call it ongoing live coding project 2. The purpose of project 2 is to get a row of data from a Google Sheet and replace some tags in a Google Doc with that specific data. So we also need a Google Doc here. So if we're going to go to New, Google Docs, and we will give this the name Live Coding Project 2 template file. A little bit of a long name, but at least it's descriptive for what we need it to do. Inside the actual document itself, then, we're going to have two items of information that we want to replace. One is going to be name, and the other one is going to be shoe size, written as such. Now, the aim is we're going to make a copy of this document and replace some information in here with the information from the Google Sheet. So as you'll have done from the previous exercises, we need to insert a tag in here. So I'm going to put my tag in between the less than and more than symbols, as we've done in the previous demo video. Be careful how you type the information in between your tags in terms of any capital letters or any spaces. You just need to be consistent with what you've got. That's all we're going to do in this template file. And I'm going to leave it open for the time being because we will need to come back to it and get the ID of the file for our app script. So we're ready to jump into our live coding project 2. So if you want to open your Google Sheet, as you'll see, you'll have some information from the last video when you were working through this. We're going to jump straight into extensions and app script. So here's some information that we already had previously, some of the coding that we did for getting a row of data and logging that. What we're going to do now is we're going to build on this and add some code to it. So what we're going to look at doing then, down here from about line 12, I'm going to put my cursor and I'm going to pop some spaces in just by hitting enter on my keyboard a few times. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this one function here for getting the raw data. We are then going to call a second function that takes our row of data and makes a copy of the Google Doc template file and puts the information into it. So that's our aim. Let's start with a comment as we usually do. So 2 forward slashes, and our comment this time is going to be call function to make copy of file and pass raw data for adding. A bit of a long description, but at least we know what we're doing here. Again, you'll have looked at the demo video for passing variables between multiple functions. So we're going to build on that and recreate that here. So what we're going to do first of all is we are going to have a function called copy file. Okay, so our function typically looks with a name and an open and close brackets like we've got up here. So we're going to sort of piece this together a little bit back to front, but it will make sense from the previous video you looked at and as we go forwards doing this. So the function is going to be copy file with a semicolon at the end as we usually expect. But we want to pass this function our raw data from the spreadsheet so that it can do something with it and actually put it into the Google Sheet, into our new Google Doc template file. So if we copy that variable there and pop it in between the brackets there, we're now saying when you call the function, which we're yet to create, called copy file, pass it the raw data. But there's one other thing we expect to do that I know that we're going to want to do, and that is we're going to want to pass the URL for the document back to this particular function here so we can pop it into our spreadsheet. So what we're going to do at the beginning here is create a variable, so var, and we're going to call it new doc URL, and we're going to set it equals to that function and that data that it's passing through. So I'm just going to hit save at this point to check it's happy. Well, yes, that's what we're doing. You're sort of reading it from right to left in this instance. You're saying run the function copy file, which we'll create in a moment, give it the raw data. Then when this function has finished, the script will return back to this row and this particular line, and then capture what we pass back in a variable called new doc URL. So just before we jump onto the function, the next thing we're going to do is want to paste that URL into our Google Sheet. So we're going to insert a comment, paste new doc URL into column in spreadsheet. And we're actually performing a job here. We're not getting anything. We're just going to be setting a value. So we don't need to store this next bit in a variable. We have our sheet up here on line 5. This is our data sheet. So we're going to call that again here by typing in sheet. We need to get the range because we need to get a specific cell to be able to type in our document URL here. So we're going to get range. If I open the brackets, all we need here is the row and the column. Now we have the row up here on line 8 because we used our active cell to get the row number. So I'm going to copy that and paste it into there. And then if you pop your comma in, the next thing it wants is the column number. Now, if we look back at our Google Sheet, we have name, shoe size, and what we actually want to do is we want to have this stored in the third column, column C. So in here, if we create a heading, new doc URL, like so, just make it a little bit wider because it's going to be a bit of a long URL. We've now introduced a third column. We're in a get range here, so we know A is 1, B is 2, so C is 3. So back in our code now, we can pop 3 in there. And then what we want to do, if we put our full stop in, is we want to set a value here. So if I start typing set value, we only set in the value of one single cell. So we only want singular value, not values. And if you open your brackets, it wants the actual value. For us here, it will be, when this runs, our new doc URL. So I'm going to copy that into there, paste it in, semicolon, and save. So that's it for this function now. This is our master function or our parent function. It's the one that must be run to do all of the work and perform the other jobs. So let's now go and create our copy file function so it makes more sense as to what's actually going on in here, and so we can actually create our document copy. So on the left-hand side, if you go to the plus icon and script, we're going to call this copy file using the usual camel case naming. Let's rename the function itself to copy file also. Let's put our cursor in between our brackets and give ourselves some space and just hit save to check everything's happy. So in order to make a copy of a file, we need to get the template file itself. So if I'm going to put a comment in, and it's going to be get template file. Now we're getting something, so we're going to store it as a variable, and I'm going to call it template file, and we're going to set it equals to, and we're going to use the Drive app here because we are going to just get the file itself. Not too bothered at this point if it is a Google Doc or a Google Sheet. We can just make a copy of a file using the Drive app. So if we get file by ID, like so, and then if I open our brackets and it wants the ID as a string, so in single or double quotes, we're going to copy the ID in there. So here is the template file we made just at the beginning of the video that we said we were going to leave open. So I'm going to grab the ID of this document, everything after the D / and before the / edit. It's a long string of symbols, letters, and numbers. If we copy that and paste it in there, it should turn red to represent a string, and we'll pop our semicolon there at the end of that line and save. The next thing we need to do is we want to get our destination folder. So if we go back into our app script folder here, at the moment, we just kind of have everything in our generic root folder that we're creating. But let's actually create a specific folder for this then, so we can control where the actual files are being created. So if we go new folder, and let's call it live coding project 2 folder. Just something like that so we know what it is. And I'm just going to double click to open that because we will need to get the ID in a moment. So if you jump back to your app script, we're going to get at the destination folder now. So let's insert a comment, get destination folder. We're getting something, so we're going to save it as a variable. So var, I'm just going to call it folder in this instance here. Same as we did before, we're going to use the Drive app. I'm just going to hit enter and let autocomplete do the work for me. I'm going to start typing get folder. Again, I'm just going to hit enter to let autocomplete do the work. Open my brackets. Insert my single or double quotes ready for the string. And if you go back to your folder here, and just grab the ID, which is everything at the end there. Paste that in. Semicolon to end the line and hit save. Next, we need to create a file name for our new document. So if we insert comment, and we're going to call this create file name for from raw data. So we're going to make it a clever file name. It's going to be dynamic. That means it can use our raw data to be able to help create the name. Now, at this point, we've got something just slightly missing from our function up here. If I jump back to the parent function, we've told it to run copy file and pass it in the variable called raw data. What we also need to do in the function itself is make sure we recreate that or repeat it basically. So we need to tell it to expect raw data. So we're just matching up the two items basically. So that there should mirror exactly what we have in this other function here. Okay, I'm just going to hit save, which means, as you'll see in a moment, we can make use of that. So we're going to create a variable and I'm going to call it file name. And I'm going to set it equals to, and I'm going to have a little bit of a string of text along with some of the raw data. So I'm going to insert single or double quotes, and I'm going to call it cool document for with a space. And then outside of the quotes, I'm going to put plus. And then what I want to do basically is I want to use my raw data. And I actually specifically want to use the name from the raw data. So the raw data, if you remember, is going to come out as an array. An array starts at 0, which means the name will be 0, shoe size would be 1, like so. So I want the name, which in this instance would be Mickey. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type the name of my array of data from the sheet, and then using my square brackets, I'm going to put 0 because the name is the first item in the array. Semicolon to end the line and hit save. Right, next we are going to make a copy of the template and get the URL of the new copy. So we're going to do two things in one here. So we're going to store this as a variable because we want to get the URL once we've made a copy of the file. So I'm going to call it new doc URL. And we're going to set it equals to, we've got the template file up here on line 4. So I'm just going to copy and paste that there. Put my full stop in. And I know I want to make copy. So if I start typing make, the autocomplete will jump in. If I open my brackets, there's a couple of things we want here that we know from the previous demo videos. We want the file name, which we've got the file name in a variable on line 10. So I'm just going to type file name. If I put a comma in, we also want the destination folder, which we've got here on line 7. So I'm going to type folder. Outside of my brackets then, because that's all we need for making the copy, we're going to actually append another method on here. So I'm going to put my full stop this time, and I want to also get URL. Just check you're happy with how it types URL, because this is a method, it has to be specific. So capital U and a lowercase RL and semicolon to end your line. So what it's going to do is it's going to make a copy of the file here and then immediately get the URL of that file. Let's hit save at that point, check we're happy. So once we've got that, we're going to carry on. The aim of it now is to get into the document and replace those tags that we created here with some data from our Google Sheet. So let's insert a comment. The comment is going to be open the new doc and get its body. So we're going to create a variable, var, new doc body, and we're going to set this equals to. Now we need to be more specific than the Drive app here, because we are working with a specific file type, a Google Doc in this instance. So we will be using the document app. So we're going to go document app, and we're going to open. And we've got two options, open by ID or by URL. We've got the URL up here already because that's what we're going to pop in the Google Sheet. So let's reuse that here. So open by URL, open your brackets, and the URL for us is stored in the variable on line 13, like so. And then as we did before, we're going to carry on appending to this, and we're going to put full stop, get body. That is going to get us the main content of the document itself. Hit save. Almost there. Now that we've got the body, we can start to target our text and our tags specifically. So let's insert our comment, which is replace the text with the data. Now we're performing an action here. We're not really getting anything back, so we don't need to store it as a variable. So we've got our new doc body here. So if I copy that, paste it there, and if I go dot replace, we can start to see the only option there is replace text. Open my brackets. We need the search pattern as a string and the replacement as a string. So if we jump into our template file, the first item we want to change there is our name tag. So the easiest thing to do is copy it, and in between single or double quotes, paste it in so it turns red. That's our string for what we want to look for. If we put our comma in and just a little bit of a space, we now want to tell it what we want to replace it by. Well, we've got a bit of a hint up here. We already know how to replace it via the name from our Google Sheet. So remember, it's in an array. Our name is 0, shoe size is 1. So we can either just copy and paste that if you wish from up here, or type it out again. But ultimately, we want to tell it wherever we clicked, take the first value from the array there. Semicolon to end the line, hit save. Immediately under that then, the next thing to do is shoe size. So I'm going to type it out this time, going to do a new dot body, dot replace text, just going to let the autocomplete do it for me by hitting enter. Open my brackets. So if I jump back to the template file, I'm going to copy the shoe size tag. In between single or double quotes, paste that in. Make sure my cursor is on the outside of the quotes to do the next comma. And then shoe size, we know that name was the first item in the array, hence it's 0. Shoe size is the second item in the array, hence it'll be 1. So if I'm copying that there, like so, and just change that to a 1. Semicolon, and hit save. The last thing we want to do then is we need to return what we were expecting here. and that is the new document URL. We need to pass it back to our parent function in order to then be able to set it in the Google Sheet. So the last thing we're going to do here in copy file with a bit of space is quite simply the word return and what we have up here, our new doc URL, semicolon. So we're saying once this function is finished and got down to here, return that variable there to the parent function. So if I hit save, which now hopefully helps you to see how we've connected the two items here. So this function will run, get the raw data, do its business, and then come back and let us store the document URL in a variable to reuse later on. So in order to try this out, first and foremost, make sure your cursor is clicked in a row of data. If you were to click somewhere down here, there's nothing and it'll just create an empty template file. So make sure you're selected in row A2. And to run this, you must run the get raw data function. You will get caught out by it, probably. You cannot run the copy file function as the main function because it relies on being passed data. It's the child function. So make sure you are clicked here in get raw data. Make sure get raw data is selected from the drop down there also. Now, when we click run, we'll get our authorization pop up because we've introduced a couple of different apps and we've made a copy of the actual Google Sheet file. So this is just confirming we're using the Drive app, the document app, etc. If we select allow. So we've still got a little bit of logging that we had going on from project 1 where we were checking the raw data. That's useful to make sure we've actually clicked in the correct part of the Google Sheet. We haven't got anything else logged. We didn't log the URL or anything like that because there's a couple of things we're going to look for. First of all, if we go to the Google Sheet, the big thing we're looking for is the really long URL here for the new document in that row. And if we click on that, here we've got our cool document for Mickey, where it's inserted the name for us. And we've got our name, Mickey, and our shoe size set from our spreadsheet. And just to double check in your Google Drive folder itself, where we created the Project 2 folder, that is where that document is stored. And that's it. Thank you very much.